y color, muerte de la primavera, se ha alejado de mi vida abriendo una herida por vez primera. No sé por qué presiento yo que esa negra no me quiere a mí, pero mi alma no se contenta porque la perdí. A sol caliente te buscaré, pero te seguiré y allá averiguaré por qué razón te fuiste ayer. ¡Ay, mamá! Tan bonita como va, tan bonita que la mira, tan divina que yo veo aquella morena en la lejanía.
Este año, Kandy, Sri Lanka, será la sede del tercer Foro Global Nyéléni. Productores de alimentos a pequeña escala, pueblos indígenas, feministas, trabajadores de la salud, activistas por la justicia climática, defensoras de la economía social y solidaria y otras luchadoras y luchadores de base llegarán desde más de 80 países para cambiar radicalmente el sistema. Frente a un sistema global violento, nos estamos levantando, resistiendo y construyendo poder desde abajo. Este foro es una chispa en nuestra lucha colectiva. Camina con nosotros rumbo a Kandy. Visita nyéleniglobalforum.org.
Welcome. We are now once again in Radio Nyéléni, live from Kandy, Sri Lanka, in the second edition of the Radio Nyéléni Live today, Wednesday, September the 10th, and we have the great pleasure of introducing Verdiana Morandi. Verdiana is the Europe Regional Coordinator in the steering group of the World Alliance of Mobile Indigenous Peoples and Pastoralists, WAMIP. Verdiana, welcome to Radio Nyéléni.
Thank you very much. Hello. I'm very, very pleased to be here on behalf of the pastoralists that are taking part in our umbrella association, which is WAMIP, World Alliance of Indigenous Mobile People. We represent at the global stage issues that are going on locally and regionally. I come from Italy, where I'm leading the Italian Shepherds Network, and try to be relevant, of course, at the European side, where I represent also WAMIP and in this situation like here, so having the chance of meeting other people doing our same job.
Before we come into the topics that we are going to be discussing today, we have a couple of questions for you. I would like to ask you, how are you feeling? We are in the middle of this third Nyéléni Global Forum. How are you feeling? What are the conclusions that you are taking so far?
Well, as we had the chance to say, we feel at home. We feel ourselves at home because this is the way we want to bring our struggle on at this global stage. It's very relevant for us to engage our struggle with peers, and it's only through a really international felt connection with other actors that we understood what are the real issues of our situation. Unfortunately, pastoralism is such a way of life, a way of living, that it's you feel like you're just struggling on your little corner. But in actual fact, the issues that are going on and are being fought by peers all around the world help us understanding what are the real core issues. I have to thank only the international gathering that helped me to understand really what was going on even in my own region. Without a global confrontation, you get no idea that what you're feeling is exactly what's going on to the other people.
Totally, I get your point, Verdiana. By the way, you play a very important role for food sovereignty, but I would like you to explain us why pastoralists are so important in that fight. I mean, we are in the framework of this forum, which is a forum that started in 2007 with food sovereignty as the most important flag. We are part of a movement of struggles for food sovereignty. Then we had in 2015 the second edition with agroecology as the most important, let's say, issue, and now with a systemic transformation vision, but still the food sovereignty umbrella is the umbrella of all our movements that we are here together. Why pastoralists are then important in this fight, in these struggles for food sovereignty?
Well, I would like to say that somehow we bring an historic memory of what it's like to be part of this world. We represent a nomadic lifestyle, which sometimes someone claims to be a modern way of living, but in actual fact, we never developed from that side. And we are absolutely known for our adaptability to the world. In actual fact, thanks to the struggle we've been going through since forever, we manage also right now to be extremely flexible in this world. We are, in actual fact, trying to go through drought, going to political challenges that are blocking our mobility, and all the food production. In actual fact, we are the only, let's say, gatekeeper in places where drought and crop production has already left. So we are the last one standing, and I think this is very important, not only because of our food production, but also for keeping on maintaining biodiversity, which is not just vegetable or things we eat, but it's also animals we take with us in their shape, in their form, in their use, and in the fact that they are part of our life, of the mankind life, and of our landscape in the world.
Totally, Verdiana. What could you say about the most important challenges that pastoralists are facing internationally, I could say, today, right now?
Well, for sure, the first one is representation, because pastoralists are very individualistic people living apart, let's say, not very social. But this is the reason why they have to keep their animals, and this is the way they survive. They cannot share the same path, the same grazing lands. Sometimes being not there, being not representative, seems like we are not interested in sharing our struggles. In actual fact, animals can never be left alone. This is why for us it's so complicated taking part to any kind of representation that takes us away from our animals. Personally, I also have to thank those who are at home instead of me doing the job. My brother, my father taking care of the animals, my mom, my sister-in-law taking care of the kids. We cannot leave any of them. And this is the main reason why pastoralists struggle so much in being involved. But this is just one of the things we are doing. Even when we manage to be a part of a wider system and we are involved, still we feel like that sometimes we are driven or ideas are imposed to us. We are very much working for the International Year of Pastoralists and Rangelands that is going to take place in 2026. And still, even there, we are struggling to be recognized as part of the steering committee, which is quite... Don't add an adjective. So it's challenging, definitely it's challenging.
Totally, Verdiana, and I would like to ask you, related to that you are saying, in which ways being part of an organization, a worldwide organization of the WAMIP, in which ways does it help to be able to be present in these spaces where there are being taken decisions that affect your lives, that have to do with your lives, for example, all the negotiations on food, for example. So I think that WAMI plays a very big important role in that sense of being sure that you are represented in these spaces. How does it help in reality?
For sure, yes, right. I would like to say that pastoralists are used not to be seen, and they fit in frameworks, even legal frameworks, that are not made for them. We fit inside agricultural laws that are not made for nomadic way of living. And so for us it was almost normal never to be specifically represented. Having the chance of step up and saying exactly how it's going to be like, and having the chance to express, for instance, what does it mean for us access to mobility. We've got different ideas about mobility. Mobility for us, for instance, is access to the land, is control of the land, and simply being part of the users that have the right to be there. And sometimes being in this place, it's very good because we have the chance to be being explicit on what we do really mean.
And do you face any kind of threats, for example, to the access to land? Or for example, when you are already in a territory, do you feel or do you face, any kind of threats, projects, etc., that are being developed in your territories and then you have to fight against them? As it happens, for example, with peasants, with indigenous peoples, do you face this same kind of challenges?
So of course, exactly. It happens on a regular basis. Because of our mobility, we just use pieces of land just for a limited time. When we go back 1 year after, the landscape may be completely changed, and other regulation have just already taken place without our consent. For instance, this happens on a regular basis when we are suffering from situation of rewilding. New protected areas, for instance, are taken into life.
Okay, again. Now that we are back, Verdiana, I was asking you if you, as pastoralists, live these kind of threats as, for example, indigenous peoples, peasants, in which, for example, they are being persecuted or their land, or they are being threatened to be taken from them, their lands. Do you face these kind of situations also?
Unfortunately, I have to say yes, it happens a lot of time on many different levels. One of the biggest examples is for sure the rewilding programs that are going on worldwide, and they deeply affect our way of living and our way of working. For instance, the fact that we use the land just for a limited number of days, and then we keep on going on with our transhumance, and we go back 6 months later or 1 year later, it means that the landscape we find is completely different from what we left. For instance, the definition of new protected areas are a typical example that comes from Europe to India to everywhere, to Africa, on a regular basis, unfortunately, thinking to do good, something good for the environment. Protected areas are established, and pastoralists are taken out without any kind of consent, without any kind of agreement on that, and simply from 1 year to the other, what used to be our historical path has to change, with dramatic consequences on the nearby areas that all of a sudden have to receive the double amount of animals. And of course, this is really damaging the environment. What is also very funny is the fact that many protected endangered species that are being hosted by protected areas, once that there is no more grazing by our animals, then they leave. And so basically what was a protected area is protecting nothing apart of keeping pastoralists out of it. So this is very typical. It happens with new parks in India and the arrival of the tiger harming extremely camels. It happens in the Alps, where, for instance, my sheep are being threatened by the arrival of wolf, of bear. And it happens everywhere. And simply the eviction of people from the land is one other way of seeing land grabbing. Not the only one, because, for instance, even afforestation plans. So the idea that basically woods are sacred spaces perfect for the environment and grazeland, rangelands are of no worth, well, this is very funny. No one stands up for keeping grazing pasture land still where they are, and still are part of our typical landscapes everywhere. But everyone stands for woods and forests. I mean, where they belong. Afforestation means creating forests where they were not belonging, not defending old ancient forests, for instance, just for the instance.
Very interesting what you are saying, because there are decisions that are taken officially, for example, in the UN spaces, in the negotiations on biological diversity, for example, for new protected areas, for what they call the solutions, but sometimes it happens, and it has been denounced by many organizations, that those solutions, what they do is take territories from indigenous peoples, from other peoples, as you are saying, this is the case. So I think it's interesting, because you are facing the same problem. And related to that, is there any kind of right to a prior and concerned, informed decision from the pastoralists, for example, as it happens with indigenous peoples, that they should be, I mean, they are not consulted, by the way, but they should be consulted, and this is a right that is an official right? Do you have some kind of something like that?
Well, I want to say that those are exactly the reason that brought me into activism and making appeal to what seems to be a recognized way of living, a recognized economic way of working. Anyway, doesn't help at all, and we're not recognized for that. For instance, advocating from so many governments on extensiveness of grazing, using more land, not keeping, also for animal welfare sake, keeping animal enclosed in stalls or places like that. Well, even that kind of things doesn't seem to help. We are very sensitive on the topic of animal health, of course, but it seems like that there is much more attention on what do our animals do, how do we treat them, more than what's the real way, what's the a natural way of living together with animals outside. It seems like that even animals have to be urbanized because someone says so.
Well, we are in an international space, and you have been, as WAMI, part of the whole process of organization of this third Nyéléni Global Forum. And I would like to ask you particularly about the relationships between WAMIP and feminist movements. What can you tell us about that?
Well, WAMIP is, as I said before, is horizontally working at this stage, taking advantage of the struggles that all the peers here are already working on. For sure, recognizing the role of the women is very relevant, because sometimes pastoralist women are really some of the only one really having some powers to decide for themselves, for the sake that they are animal holders. So it was an insurance at many levels. Personally, I'm very much aware of the idea of intersectionality, and consider also ourselves with so many layers, and that we bring on the stage so many issues that made us culturally, originally the way we are. I think it's the way to be together. We work very much also with Women's March and other groups here, and we are not giving up on that.
Verdiana, I don't know if there is anything that I probably didn't ask you and you would like to mention before we end this interview. Would you like to add something?
Well, I have to say just one thing. We are working very much to keep us active as a producer, food producer. This goes, of course, not against, but it doesn't seem to be posh anymore somehow in some context due to vegan protests that are mainly coming from urban context. We are very much suffering from this kind of discriminalization, which is not helpful. And we would really like to show the way we produce food, the way we sustain communities, against a way of being part of another kind of movement that in actual fact just provide another kind of food that gives another kind of label on things. For instance, just for your information, transhumant pastoralists don't access to the label of certified organic food, because only those producers who keep their animals inside an area and control what they eat reach this level. So sometimes you think, well, fantastic, I'm having this wonderful organic food, but maybe it arrives somehow from many, many kilometers away. We cannot recognize ourselves as organic and a diploma in a certificate, but we are indeed in the way we produce, in the way we work, and in the way we live.
Okay, Verdiana, it really seems to me that, WAMIP, as the pastoralists all around the world, have, very important struggles, challenges. So the best of the lucks for you all, for the movement itself, and I really appreciate your presence here, being here with us in Radio Nyéléni Live.
Thank you very much. Just one recommendation: when you see around sheep, make pictures, be quiet, be happy, enjoy this sight. Thank you very much, everyone, and please stay with us in our struggle, be part of our point of view also, and help us being represented and be present where it counts. If you feel like that a pastoralist point of view it's not there, please report it. And I just want to say one thing that came to me in these days, and it's like this: if it doesn't bear, then it's not my revolution. So please stay with us.
Okay, thank you. It was Verdiana Morandi, Europe Regional Coordinator in the steering group of the World Alliance of Mobile Indigenous Peoples and Pastoralists, WAMIP. Keep with us in Radio Nyéléni Live. We are coming back with an interview soon. Making the links between climate justice and the fight for food sovereignty and systemic transformation. And remember, systemic transformation is now or never.
The climate, food, political, and economic crises are not a mere coincidence. They are the result of a capitalist system that has reached its limits. The time to change everything is now. The third Nyéléni Global Forum 2025 is underway. Land, water, seeds, health. They are not for profit, they are life. No more theft, no more destruction. With feminism, indigenous knowledge, and rights for all, we rise to defend the commons. In Nyéléni, the future is rooted in the people.
Well, we continue with Radio Nyéléni live in this second edition of the day. As I said at the beginning, Wednesday, September the 10th, we are in the middle basically of this third Nyéléni Global Forum. And we are now with Liz Masson. Liz is from Friends of the Earth International. She is the co-coordinator of the Climate Justice and Energy Program. Liz, welcome. Very nice being, in this interview with you.
Thanks for having me.
Before going into our questions, Liz, any conclusion, any comments that you would like to do about the forum so far?
I think it's a really interesting and powerful process in itself. It's I think in all processes like this, you get to this point where you're kind of halfway, and there's a bit of anticipation of what's going to happen, what's going to come out of it. But I think there's really a beauty and power in the process in itself, kind of regardless of what's going to come out of it. This process of coming together from so many different cultures, struggles, backgrounds is a really powerful thing in itself.
Totally, I agree, Liz. So the first question we had said, and I thought for you was, is it enough moving from fossil fuels to renewables to achieve climate justice and system change?
I mean, a very short answer would be no, but maybe to just unpack a little bit more. I think when we look at the energy transition with the lens of system change, we have to really unpack what we mean by system change. And for us, that means that we need to look at the root causes of all the polycrises that we're going through right now. The climate crisis, the social crisis, the environmental crisis, all these crises take roots in the same systems of oppression, of colonialism, of extractivism, capitalism, and it's the same actors behind all of these crises, right? So if we look at the climate crisis, if we trust the same actors, the transnational corporations and the rich northern governments that have created the crisis and continue to fuel that crisis, if we trust them to move us from fossil fuels to renewables, then we end up with the same patterns of extractivism. And that's what we're seeing with the so-called green economy, right? Green transition. We're seeing a massive kind of rush to extractivism, again, especially in the global south, in countries like Argentina, for critical minerals to kind of fuel this transition that's going to benefit the same corporations, the same elites. So for us, when we look at the question of the just transition, what we demand is a feminist just energy transition. And that means it's so much more than going away from fossil fuels and towards renewables. It's about workers' justice, it's about feminist economies, it's about dismantling militarism and saying no to the genocide, it's about dismantling corporate power. So it's about moving the power from corporations into the hands of people.
Yeah, Liz, talking about that and mentioning, for example, the links between the corporate powers that are behind the different polycrises that we are mentioning, and also behind the genocide in Gaza, for example. What could you tell us about some of these companies, probably some examples that you could share of the role played by these companies in the different countries that are related to this crisis, and also that they are key actors in the climate change?
Yeah, I think the example of Palestine is a massive example of that. When we look at what is happening in Palestine, we have a genocide that's been unfolding before our eyes for almost 2 years now, and we see that the impacts are so tremendous. We see that, like energy sovereignty has been completely destroyed for Palestinians. Food is being used as a weapon of war with starvation. Land is being completely destroyed. So the impacts are going to go beyond generations and generations to come. The latest research is that in Palestine, over 98% of land is either damaged or inaccessible. That's going to have consequences for decades to come. And at the same time, if we look at who is enabling this genocide, who is complicit in it, it's the same governments, it's the same northern governments, and it's the same companies. If we take just one example, Chevron, they are the top producer of gas for Israel, so really like literally fueling this genocide. And at the same time, Chevron around the world is fueling the climate crisis and is having terrible impacts on frontline communities. We see in Ecuador, our group in Ecuador, UDAPT, are struggling against Chevron and the damages that they have done in the Amazon that are, again, going to be damages for generations to come. So again, it's these same actors that are fueling all of these impacts and all of these terrible impacts on our communities, whether it's in Palestine, in Ecuador, or everywhere around the world.
What do you feel when you see a report, Liz, where the official rapporteur of the United Nations for the occupied territories in Palestine mentioned all the different companies that are related to this genocide, and this is something that many of our organizations have been denouncing for years. How did you feel when you saw it? Talking about Francesca Albanese, of course.
Yeah, I think it feels like, in a way, this isn't news, right? Like, we know that these corporations only have their profit in mind, right? They've never shown any intention to benefit communities, but it is really infuriating to see, and I think it really, for me, it really reinforces this sentiment that we need to dismantle corporate power, and when we look at Palestine, we need to boycott these companies, we need to really oppose corporate power that is putting communities in Palestine and everywhere around the world, especially in the global south, on the front lines. I think the time to kind of give them a chance to show us that they have any intention to find so-called solutions that will actually benefit people, that time is up. It was up decades ago.
Liz, how is the Nyéléni Global Forum connected with the People's Summit that will take place in Belém, in Brazil, during the COP30 that is happening in next November?
So both the Nyéléni process and the People Summit in Belém are processes of movement convergence. Nyéléni around food sovereignty, the People Summit in Belém around climate justice, broadly. So these are processes to bring movements together, to bring social movements together, to bring frontline communities together from around the world to build a political agenda that can address this polycrisis. And I think now more than ever, such processes of convergence are really, really critical, because we're seeing that in the face of the rise of fascism and the far right and the genocide and all these attacks on our rights, on our communities, on our peoples, it is more important than ever that we come together across social movements to really build a power that can dismantle those systems of oppression, of colonialism, of extractivism, of capitalism. It's the only way that we can find the solutions. It's not even find the solutions, because we have the solutions. All communities have always had the solutions. We just need to take the power away from corporations, away from the elites, and into the hands of people so that they can implement these solutions that are already there in our communities.
Friends of the Earth International has been one of the international organizations involved in which is going to be the People's Summit. What can you tell us in advance? What can we know? I know that we still have a while before this summit, but what can we share with the people so far?
I think we can expect that there is going to be a lot of similarities with what we're seeing here at Nyéléni, and that's understandable because, again, our movements are interconnected. So when we look at the kind of axis of convergence that the People Summit is currently building towards this moment in Belém, there's a lot of similarities with the kind of proposals put forward in this process here in Nyéléni. And that's because we're building a political agenda that responds to the crisis, and because the crises are interconnected, the solutions are. And so that political agenda has a lot of crossover. So I think it's important to also see these these processes of convergence, not in isolation, not as processes that are happening in silos, but that feed into each other. So it's not just we'll leave Nyéléni and then we'll wait a little bit and then it will be Belém. There's a movement, a process of feeding from one moment to another to really build this momentum and this political power.
Okay. Which are the links between energy sovereignty and food sovereignty?
So, again, I think the links, it's around sovereignty, right? It's about who has power, and it's about putting power back in the hands of people. So when we talk about energy sovereignty, what we mean is having energy as a common good. So tackling corporate power in favor of empowering communities to have the control and agency over, well, their power. Literally, and it's the same with food sovereignty. It's giving that agency and that power back to people, and that's because that's the only way that it actually works, right? Like we've talked about the impacts of renewables when they're being scaled up by big corporations. Those corporations don't have the understanding of local communities, of the land, of the biodiversity, of the environment. I was chatting with someone from Sri Lanka yesterday who was talking about how there's a tension here in Sri Lanka with the development of solar energy and the impacts that this is having on biodiversity. But that's exactly why that transition and that implementation of the just transition needs to go through communities, need to go through energy sovereignty, because only local people have the ancestral knowledge and understanding of their land, of their environment, and can implement this transition in a way that benefits both their own communities and the environment around them. So again, it's connected because it's about people power, it's about who has control, and it's about dismantling those systemic roots of the crisis.
Okay, Elise, well, anything that you would like to add before we end this interview?
Probably see you in Belém.
Okay, there is the invitation for the peoples around the world to be present in Belém. We are speaking with Lise Masson. She's the co-coordinator of the Climate Justice and Energy Program of Friends of the Earth International. Lise, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, and we are with this interview with Liz. We are ending this new edition of Radio Nyéléni live from Kandy, Sri Lanka, the second edition of the day today. So I think we are saying just goodbye to everybody, and we meet tomorrow again. Remember, systemic transformation is now or never.
This was one more voice in the growing tide ahead of the third Nyéléni Global Forum. We communicate to resist, we dream to transform. We will continue to meet in the territories, in the struggles, and at nyeleniglobalforum.org.